Hi everyone. So today I'm going to do a little quick demo for painting feet and doing monochromatic painting for that. So I know in class I told you that we will be using Yupo. Unfortunately, I forgot to give them out to you guys. Um, so instead of doing gouache on Yupo, we're actually gonna do watercolor on our hot press paper, monochromatic painting. But at the end, we're actually gonna uh, use a bit of gouache. So it will be both watercolor and gouache for today and for this demo. So for this painting, I think feet can say a lot in terms of, storytelling, how, it doesn't necessarily have to be your face. When we think of body parts or portraiture, that's what we think of. But I thought it'd be kind of fun to start from the bottom, right, of your body. And maybe we can work our way up in a sense. But just a quick internet search of paintings of feet should show you that there are a lot of really interesting work out there, and in the way that you can capture movement or different poses, or if they're multiple feet, you can even distort them or make them all, I don't know, twisted and interwoven. So what I actually did was I took quite a few photos of my feet myself. I thought this would be kind of fun to do because it shows movements. But I thought maybe I'll choose this one that actually is, quite static or still. But I enjoyed this light in the middle that I was able to capture. So this kind of the value kind of difference because of the light that's created, I thought would be interesting for a monochromatic painting. So before I started the video, I just quickly sketched it out. And let's get started. So I kind of marked, some parts that are, really dark. I even lightly outlined the light, the shape of the light for me, because that's going to be pretty important for this specific painting. That's because that's the reason I chose this reference image. But I think I'm going to be a lot looser with this painting. I think that would be really fun to do. Because we see a lot of photorealistic paintings of bodies and body parts, but and we normally think of illustration when we think of watercolor, but I think we can be a bit more painterly, right, as well, and experiment with different strokes. So first thing to do for monochromatic painting is that you have to choose what chroma, right, your color that you want to use. So I think I am going to work with the browns today. I was trying to decide between pink, brown, and blue, but I think it would be, well, actually, you know what? I'm gonna do a cold red. Yeah, that's what I'll do. I'll do like an alizarin crimson type of cold red, but do note that just because you're doing monochromatic painting doesn't mean it's just one single paint. It could be kind of a family of all the different blues, right, that you can use, or the family of the brown tones. Okay, so keep that in mind as you are doing your work. So I'm actually going to be using these kind of mostly these two, right, permanent rose and carmine, kind of your alizarin type of color. There. Well, I changed my mind one more time. Sorry about that. I am gonna do the blues. That just, I don't know why. It just seems right for this painting. Okay, so let's do that. What I did was I actually, when I printed out the reference image, I converted it into black and white. I would suggest, converting it to black and white and adjusting your contrast and exposure if you want to see higher contrast. I am doing that because we are not painting the color realistically, right? So I'm not doing kind of a skin tone or trying to capture that. But we are working with, I'm making a blue painting, for example. So it's more important that I'm able to see the light and dark and the values here. So for this painting, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to, I normally start out with kind of the lighter parts and then move into dark and then rework the medium or the middle portion. But today, I think I am going to start with the darkest portion. So what I'm gonna do is I am letting kind of this, there's a deep kind of shadow around. And again, I'm hoping that the fact that the subject matter is feet is going to help you guys get out of this kind of thinking of what we normally think of when we're painting faces or parts of our bodies, that it has to be flattering or in this conventionally beautiful kind of manner, kind of this picture um perfect moment. But I don't want that, right? Because we've seen that enough already. So kind of think of something that's interesting. I like, I was playing with the angle of my phone camera actually to see how can I distort, this angle, right? Where the legs are kind of moving up. Yeah, so kind of you can do a lot and manipulate the image to make the composition interesting. Okay. So what I'm doing is, like, for me, I'm gonna do a bit of an indigo here that's kind of really, and some phthalo. And even though it's monochromatic, you kind of mix the color as long as it's still in the blue family to make it even darker. So I'm actually gonna put a little dab of Van Dyke in here because it just kind of mutes that indigo even more. And I kind of just want it to be a little bit more, free and fluid for this painting. Maybe because it's a body, right, that I have the desire to do so. But you can kind of play with the saturation. So already just with the one tone, right, we have this nice gradation that's happening. I guess it could also be similar to doing an underpainting for oil paintings. Yeah. Alright. And also, like, in between the toes, I'm doing wet on wet here, as you can see. The part I wet a bit before. And I'm going to just kind of pull that out a bit. So you may have noticed I am paying a lot more attention to the negative space in this painting. That is also quite intentional, just because we've been focusing a lot on positive space in the objects, right? So I think it would be nice for us to kind of really play with and explore um, negative space in this. Okay. So for now, I'm actually going to uh, just lightly paint over the part that's supposed to be a bright light source. Because you will have to wait until the end to see what I do and why I did that. So here I'm still kind of wetting this area. I'll go in there with a bit of indigo and phthalo and Van Dyke. And then I feel like, okay, maybe that got a little too dark. So I'm just gonna go in there with kind of a drier, cleaner brush and just suck that up very carefully. Yeah, and now you're already kind of starting to see something, right, happening here. Okay, so now I'm gonna kind of go in there with a tone that's a little bit more saturated than the darkest parts, but still dark. Okay. So I'm mixing kind of two of your kind of most intense blues in here. And then there's just kind of this beautiful shadow, very strong shadow forming. So it's not as dark as this right here, right, which is not darkest area, but it's still pretty dark. Okay. Okay. So I'm just kind of building a bit of, shape now. And I'm just gonna let things, I'm trying not to control things too much with this painting. But focus on, still creating an illusion of three-dimensional form and modeling. So I know this is a challenging subject matter, but I'm hoping the fact that it's monochromatic will, make it a little less intimidating. And then I'm gonna go back in there and pick up the parts that are supposed to be a little lighter. So towards the end of this, we are actually going to do some highlights with white gouache. Yeah, so which is also what I'm not too worried about the highlights just yet. Okay. Yeah, and I actually have deformity on my feet where I have extra bones. I know. It's kind of funny because there are some bone, like a bone right here that's a lot more prominent, um, really visible than other people because I have extra bones on top of the normal bone. Isn't that funny? Okay. So I feel pretty good about that foot right there. I will actually though dab a bit of color in the nail part, except for kind of the highlight in the middle. So I'm gonna do the same thing here. I'm gonna mark this darker shadow. So again, kind of indigo. And I'm gonna put some Van Dyke in there, but this looks a little too brown, so now I have to make it more blue. There we go. And for my view, it's actually a little kind of darker right here before it curves, right, my leg. So I'm just going to do that. Okay. And then I'm like, oh, okay, so I can also extend this negative space out here. And then with really, really light, just gonna water down tone. I'm just gonna brush some color so it's not so starkly white here. Okay. Then there's kind of this gets darker around here. And from what I see, so think of, so my leg is also, in terms of its form, it's a cylindrical form, right? So I have my kind of shadow here. Then right before it kind of, rounds, it gets quite dark. So it's connected to the shadow over here, but it gets dark, but then there's the reflective light right before it rounds over. At the very edge, it actually gets lighter. Maybe I was thinking about like Picasso's Old Man and the Guitar, where it's all kind of a blue tone. And here too, so now I'm just gonna start building, some shading here. Yeah, there's like huge, big toe calluses, so the shape is all like right here. It's exaggerated almost. Just from years of running, in long distance running, which I used to do. It's interesting how much your feet can also say about just you, right? What kind of shoes you wore for years. Oh, what's it doing? And toenails are one of those things that you almost don't want to over exaggerate, right? You don't want to, because it would kind of, it will end up being the only thing that you see. It's kind of like teeth. You almost want to abstract it slightly, or just, really just tiny bit of little definition. Do you see how far that goes? Okay, so parts like that I really like are like parts like this. I think that's, quite lovely. So now I'm just gonna go and make a pretty saturated kind of dark blue. Make sure you have a lot of paint and water so it glides easily and smoothly, that it doesn't look thirsty, right? But it's not so watered down that when it dries you can barely see anything, right? And I'm just gonna, I'll just do some little touch-ups for parts that can just use some tightening of the form. And parts like here actually is pretty dark for me. So I'm actually gonna even overlap that area. Move some that up over here. So I'm basically adjusting the values to just darken some more areas around here. Um, okay. There you go. So I think now we have a pretty convincing painting of feet here. But I kind of want to think of the, we talked about the negative space quite a bit. I want to, oops, there's a piece of hair. I could extend this farther. Farther out. And if you have like a larger, so you will be getting these brushes in class, next class. They can be used for acrylics or watercolor. Although I would kind of, you'll get a couple, and I would try to make sure that you don't intermix, just because it's not that great for brushes to do that. But I'm just gonna kind of do some larger kind of strokes. No larger. And just for decorative reasons, right? Because I can. If you want, you can do some more expressive shift and values. One second. Hi, thank you. That was my delivery man. I got a case of wine delivered, so they needed to make sure I was home and over 21. But okay. So now I just want to go in there and do a teeny bit of more kind of detail work for just little parts. If you want to be a lot more detailed and tighter, you are more than welcome to do that. For me, I thought it would be nice to just kind of shift gear in the way that I've been doing most demos and be a bit looser. Yeah. But that is completely up to you. Okay. So now we kind of wait for this to dry a bit, but one thing we can do is so you can get your gouache out, right? That was given to you the first day of class. And I'm actually going to put let's see. I'm gonna take this. And you don't have to take it out like this, but I just kind of like having more space. You won't be able to close it again so easily, depending on what you do to the bottom area. But these also dry really quickly, so don't worry about it. It's hollow down here. So I just put a little bit of white, and what I'm gonna do is, ooh, isn't it weird? Because we haven't really been using white, right? And it's pretty opaque, okay? So gouache is like opaque watercolor in a sense. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put a teeny bit of water. So I'm gonna test it on here to see. Okay, it's still a little too opaque for me. Okay, that looks about right. And I'm actually going to put it just over here. And then so I'm gonna go in there to kind of all the highlights and then apply some white for parts that I want to be kind of better defined. Um, you can do that too. So do you see how opaque that gets? If you want to have it more kind of this drawing quality, you can even like, follow the form with the white. Ooh, I like what that did over there. Cool. So, okay, I like what happened there. And now I'm gonna use a bit more of it to, do you have like a smaller brush? The kit comes with this, kind of basically the same looking brush. So if you want to kind of dab that, and I'm just gonna go in and, um, put on my highlights a bit. It's very common for people to use both gouache and watercolor in the same painting. Also very common is gouache and acrylic together. I feel like gouache is kind of that interesting paint, like right between acrylics and watercolor. And since we're doing acrylics next, I thought it would be a good way to kind of introduce this to you. Capture some light in there. Yeah, and what I can also do is like, I can even like mix some of the blue. And this blue is a little too blue for what I'm doing, so I'm gonna mix in the blue with a little bit of black in here to make it a bit just kind of this grayish, bluish tone. So it's like a blue-gray, which is kind of what I have over here. And just very strategically, I'm gonna put that color in a couple of places. If there are places you wanted to like define a little more. Yeah. And then maybe go in there and like put some severe highlight that I see. having this like a lot more intense, a lot kind of more opaque. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm just gonna add that light in there. I'm gonna add that light over here. It's quite lovely, isn't it? Yeah. And if you want to do anything else to the background, you can. You know, it might be fun to actually have more abstract patterns in the back instead of necessarily relying on your photo. Yeah, I can even see some rays of light coming out. Not sure, but yeah, so that is our demo for today. Thanks.